Hi everyone, this is a video using a small extract to practice the unseen extract task for Paper 2 Section A of the Political and Social Protest Writing English Literature paper, where you're going to be confronted with an extract you've never seen before, which could be prose, poetry or drama, and you've got to be able to connect that extract to the genre of political and social protest and essentially tell the examiner why that extract fits into that genre. The extract that I'm about to show you is an extract that I've written myself, so it's not available anywhere else, and that reminds me that it's a really good activity to do with students, or for you to do yourself if you are a student, to write something creatively in order to revise these kind of elements. Literature is not always about analysing what other people say. Literature is also about creating your own and writing your own creative writing based on being inspired by other works. So I would encourage my students to write small paragraphs of political and social protest in order to practice these elements. It's just as valid. So this video I'm going to be showing you an extract which I've called The Watchers. It's an extract that I've written myself a few days ago. So for you, this is truly unseen because, of course, this extract is not available anywhere else in the world, probably. So this is purely unseen, and therefore bodes resemblance to what you will actually get in the exam, something you've never read before, and you've got to be able to connect it to the genre within about an hour or so. So what I'll do is I'll read through the extract with you first. I'll give you some time to then analyse it yourself and annotate it yourself if you wish. And then I'll finish this video with an overview, which is the first paragraph of your essay, to tell the examiner what's going on and to start to elaborate on what you regard to be significant when you view this extract through the lens of that genre. Okay, so this is the extract. To be honest with you, I did kind of push the boat out with this extract. This is quite dystopian, and it's inspired by a bit of The Handmaid's Tale. It's inspired a little bit by the Second World War. It's inspired a little bit by 1984, a little bit by, I think, Fahrenheit 451. So there's a plethora of these political and social protest writing texts in this. So I'll read through it, and then I'll give you some time to analyse it and perhaps discuss it if you're doing this with others. So the new government that named itself the Watchers made several new laws in their first week in office after abolishing the House of Lords and dismissing the judiciary. One was to send children to school for 7 days a week. Their electoral slogans were all over social media. Academic standards are falling, they said. The United Kingdom is lagging behind, they said. Productivity and economic growth is plummeting, they said. And since the population was scared of war and another pandemic, they voted for whoever sounded the strongest. That's why, when the Watcher got into number 10, he said, "War and disease would have killed you, but you'll be safe now. Let's make the UK great again." A landslide victory followed, and people cheered. On the second day of the new regime, it was made compulsory to go to church. On the third day, it was made law that all men aged between 18 to 40 were to complete military training. The internet was also shut down, and the use of social media banned. On the 4th, abortion was made illegal, and it was made law that all gay men would wear a pink triangle tattooed on their hand to warn others, particularly parents, that a man with perversions was near. On the 5th, it became law that children would go to school 7 days a week for 12 hours a day, including 6 hours of maths and 2 hours of physical exercise. Students could only read the Bible and a list of 10 novels. Most books were but destroyed. Obese children were not allowed to eat more than 50 calories a day. All the classrooms displayed a portrait of the Watcher with eyes, angular and piercing, following people around the room. It was made mandatory that boys and girls would have their heads shaved, their white hair sheared like a lamb's fleece, in the middle of the sports halls up and down the country, their eyes watery and tired. Adult and children who attempted to rebel disappeared, never to be seen again. Okay, so that is an example of an extract. Of course, hopefully you can see when I was writing this, I did have political and social protest writing in mind. So you can pause this video now to think about what about this extract you would want to talk about and link to political and social protest, and then I will show you some of the annotations. So here you have the extract which has just been highlighted but not annotated, and again this might prompt you to look at particular bits that you hadn't thought about before. The bits I've colour-coded here or highlighted here would be significant in terms of political and social protest. So have a think about what these phrases or these words could link to in terms of the genre. And now we have the annotations. So just to break this down a bit more, the name of the regime, the Watchers, which is the name of the new political party that got into power, is obviously dystopian. It's very much to do with surveillance, the idea of Big Brother watching you, everything that you do. And one of the first things that they did is they abolished the House of Lords and the monarchy, sorry, the judiciary even. And they did that because those are both institutions that can question the law. They have more power, for example, than the House of Commons in the UK. So there is a degree here of abolishing those that could represent a barrier to you and what you want to bring about. The slogans are obviously very repetitive. Again, we get that a lot of the time in Handmaid's Tale and 1984. What they're saying and the repetition of those sentences and how they're kind of paralleled in construction with "they said" at the end is very monotonous and almost quite forceful in itself. We're talking here about government, we're talking here about an election, and an election, of course, is a democratic thing. The electorate voted, so there's a democratic choice here. But the question, of course, is that the electorate will often vote based on what they hear political parties saying during the election campaign. And if what you're saying are lies or untrue or manipulative or fear-mongering, that's going to affect who the people vote for. And the more fearful the electorate is, the more likely they are going to vote for somebody extreme. So fear is a great motivating factor in who people vote for in an election. If you're feeling fearful, then you're going to vote for people that are tough or appear tough because they have made you believe that they're going to put you first. So they vote. It was a landslide victory, and the Watcher basically said that thank you for voting for me, I'll look after you. So he's playing here on their emotions, and I think you call that a demagogue. A demagogue is a leader that manipulates people's emotions and plays on their fears in order to gain power. And he says, let's make the UK great again, which is a slogan that I'm sure we've all heard before by certain people. People cheered. So as is always the case with an election, there is a degree of optimism, there's a sense of renewal, this is a fresh start, but you never quite know what's going to happen during an administration. 4 or 5 years is a long time, and you never quite know if that cheering is going to be valid. And then we get a list of things that they did. They made it compulsory to go to church, which suggests that religion is being used as a weapon. There's almost a theocratic idea here of forcing people to go to church to have religious teaching, which is a lack of choice. You don't have to have faith in the UK. You can be an atheist or an agnostic. That's absolutely fine. But you're forcing people here to go to church, which is relatively undemocratic. They ban the internet and they shut down social media, which means that you are stopping people from having a voice. You're making people voiceless. You're shutting down chances of rebellion, and people freely being able to communicate. So you're taking away freedom of speech, which is again undemocratic. They made it illegal for women to have abortions, which of course we've seen recently in the news. In the United States, for example, with the Roe versus Wade law being repealed. Thinking of the Holocaust here, where gay men were asked to wear pink triangles. This is what this regime is doing as well. So again, that's discriminatory and shows that this is a regime which is using prejudice as a way to make laws, and how the political comes from the personal. What business is it of these politicians to think about people's sexuality. So again, it's part of the personal becoming the political. And then in terms of schooling, children were also heavily regulated. They had to go to school 7 days a week. They had 6 hours of maths and 2 hours of PE. They could only read a selection of 10 novels, which were carefully chosen. Other books were destroyed. So that's very Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Very kind of theocratic with the Bible. Censorship, controlling of knowledge, destruction of knowledge, etc. You have this photograph on the wall everywhere with eyes that are piercing and angular, those adjectives there, making out that you cannot escape the watch of the watcher, a bit like Big Brother state. And then you have almost this Blakean idea. This is from the Chimney Sweep, one of the Chimney Sweep poems, where the children's heads are shaved and their white hair is sheared like a lamb's fleece. So that's from Blake, that's a Blake idea. But of course, a lot of innocence here, white and lamb, typical motifs in political and social protest to do with innocence and purity and sacrifice. So that's why that's there in that simile. And then we finish again with this idea of paranoia, that the more dystopian a regime, the more totalitarian or draconian a regime, the more paranoia that's going to be created, because people are going to be looking behind their shoulder all the time. So people are disappearing and nobody knows where they're going. So there's that fear of punishment and repercussions. So like I said, I did kind of go all out here with this one. This is something that I wrote a few days ago. It's a pastiche, or it's a mixture of many different political and social protest texts. But again, useful because it goes to the heart of what this task is, which is something you've never seen before, and you try to analyse it to figure out how it's political and social protest. So hopefully you can see why. So I'm going to finish this video, like with all of these videos, by giving you the first paragraph of an essay. Let's imagine that this was an extract you got in the exam, which would be interesting because I hope I would get a check for it. But this is what you could start by saying, just to basically say this is what the extract is about, and this is how it links to the genre. The extract presents the beginning of a dystopian totalitarian regime in the United Kingdom and details the first week of a new political party gaining power after an election win. Even though this suggests freedom to vote in the democratic sense, the extract presents a draconian society with aggressive and discriminatory laws being enacted, such as banning abortion and asking all gay men to show pink triangles, which is reminiscent of the treatment of homosexuals in the Holocaust. The Watchers is the name for the new political party, with the Prime Minister being called the Watcher. His name suggests surveillance and a lack of freedom, particularly for minorities, which is reinforced with his portrait being displayed in all classrooms. The extract shows how sometimes the personal becomes politicised and how peace is a fragile thing. You never know exactly what the future holds or what vision political leaders may have to create a utopian state, even though such a place is probably unachievable and purely aspirational. So interesting here, utopia is often what politics is motivated by. Each political party across the world has a vision. They want to make the country better. But the problem is that what are you going to do to achieve that? And people's visions are different. People can't agree what better actually is. What's better for you might not be better for somebody, living in a house opposite you at home. So the reason why we have 8 political parties is we have 8 political visions, 8 political utopias which we think are going to make the country better. The problem is nobody ever agrees with what better is. Think of Nazism. For Hitler, better was mass genocide and gassing Jewish people and burying them in a huge hole in the ground. That is different perhaps to socialism and the politics of socialism, for example. So what political leaders are often motivated by is a vision, but the question is, how are you going to get that vision? And what is going to be the fallout from that vision? So if your vision is to live in a state or a country that bans abortion, what are you going to do when people don't go along with it? What is the fallout going to be from that? And there is the phrase that I often use, which is, in the process of creating a utopia for some, you're always going to create a dystopia for others. You can't keep everybody happy all the time in politics with plans that you have. There's always going to be somebody behind the 8 ball. There's always going to be somebody that loses a bit. You're never going to be able to keep everybody happy. So politics is this fine balance. And if you think of the Taliban, for example, in the Kite Runner, that's another example of a theocratic extremist regime. The Taliban's utopian idea in that novel is to create a better Afghanistan. The problem is, though, in order to get to that utopia, there's a lot of suffering, violence, and bloodshed. So it's about how you get to that utopia is the issue. Okay. It's worth bearing in mind as well with this political and social protest writing module that not all countries in the world would be allowed to study these texts, even the United States. In some states in the US right now, as I'm recording this video, teachers could be sacked for teaching this module because of the laws and the politics which are there at the moment. And it's also this case in other places like Russia and perhaps in North Korea as well. So we're tremendously lucky in the UK to live in a country where we can study these texts, because not everywhere in the world can. It would be a sackable offence, and there have been stories of teachers being sacked in the United States, for example in Florida and Texas, for studying texts which go against what the politics of that state want. So we're tremendously lucky. However, final message from me before I finish this video: peace is a fragile thing. You never know what's in the future. There is not one future, but several possible futures. And the future that we get depends on who we vote for. So this kind of regime, unfortunately, is not impossible. So we need to be aware of that and need to make sure we hold our politicians to account when they are pledging for our votes. Okay? So don't want to scare anybody, but peace is a fragile thing. You never know what the future holds. And we can never say, oh, that would never happen in the UK. Who says so? So anyway, that is another example of a short extract. I've now recorded 4 videos using short extracts, the links of which are all in the bottom of in the description box. Okay, thank you very much and good luck, and hope your exams go really well. Thank you.